Okay. I'd like to call the regular council meeting of Wednesday, September the 21st to order. We are honored to be gathered on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. The regular council meeting was supposed to be on September the 19th, and it's been postponed to today. So thanks to everyone. Before we call the meeting to order, I would like to read a message. Village Freeman William Bronco Moncrief passed away at 95 years of age. We have the flags flying at half-mast. Bronco Moncrief, the village offers our sincerest condolences to the family of William Bronco Moncrief upon hearing of their loss. Bronco was elected as an alderman in 1967 and served as mayor from 1969 to 1993 and from 1997 to 2002, then as a councillor from 2005 to 2011. Bronco was conferred the award of Freeman of the Village in 1993, awarded a special recognition of 35-plus years for long service from the Union of BC Municipalities in 2011, and awarded the Order of the Rising Sun in 2011 from the Consul General of Japan in BC in recognition of his efforts to elevate the status of Japanese Canadians. Bronco's leadership in the community led to the retention of the Cumberland Hospital Services, the establishment of the Cumberland Museum in 1981, decades of work to restore Cumberland's Japanese cemetery, the 2002 acquisition of the No. 1 Japanese town site in Coal Creek Historic Park, and the renaming of Nikai Mountain in 2002. Bronco was born in Cumbria, England, and moved as an infant with his family to Cumberland in 1928. He grew up on Camp Road. His contributions have touched all aspects of our community, and he will be missed dearly by all those whose lives he has touched. And I'm sure there's many people that have many memories of him and his behavior and his comments. He loved this community tremendously, and he was the first mayor that I actually started my term in, and he was a character. He taught us a lot of things back then, and I missed him when he did stop his his campaign in run and sat as a councillor. He was missed by all members of council at that time, and we will look at him with fond memories. So now we will go on to call to order. Approval of the agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Minutes. Recommendation that adopt the following minutes.
The receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Recommendation to receive the heritage minutes.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. No delegations, no correspondence, no unfinished business. Reports. That council received the report wastewater upgrade project progress report update and budget amendments.
Move receipt. Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Well, Paul, it's been a while.
It has, and I think the last time I was here was late spring or early summer, and on a rainy day, and I said I wanted to come back here in summer, and here I am, 2 days left of summer, and it still feels like it. So it's great to be back. I guess I could technically take issue with the statement you just made, Your Worship, that about there's no unfinished business, because we have some unfinished business, which is why I'm here, and happy to bring it back to council. I hope you've all read my report. I'm not going to go through it, but to summarise it in a few sentences, we've made some actual progress at the site. I originally thought I'd show some photos, but if you actually want to go for a walk down there along the nice new walking trail parallel to it, and you can then walk down to the where it was closed off, and you get a nice view of the site. And now with all the trees cleared, it looks like a site that is ready for construction. So that's good. And we had them do some work on surface drainage, so the site is winterized to some extent. If it starts raining next week, and we have something happen like we had last November, we've got the surface drainage such that we're protected as much as we can be, and we won't have a huge mud bath. So that's one of the things we've done. That's the site work that's been done. We've been progressing with the design work, which has enabled us to do more accurate cost estimates, which unfortunately has led to higher cost estimates than what we had in the past. It's not a surprise, but we've quantified them. And in there with those cost estimates, we've defined some contingency amounts based on what we know and what we don't know. Effectively, that budget is what the project team deems we need to complete it with all the information that we have. Barring unexpected events and with the contingency we have, we should be able to complete. So that's where it's at on that budget of 12.41 million. And then the second part of the report there about the phase 2 part, the good stuff. So we're ready to get moving on that. And I'll just summarize the differences between the two phases. I've mentioned it in the past, and I'll just say it again for clarity. With phase 1, it's a defined scope. We have to do the things we have to do, and unfortunately we have to wear whatever the costs are for the things we have to do. So the scope is pretty much fixed, and the budget fluctuates to achieve that scope. With phase 2, we take it the reverse, where we've fixed the budget and the different items. We have some latitude in changing the scope, how ambitious we get on doing habitat restoration, or how fancy with the new channel, how much curves and meanders and ponds and so on. So we have more discretion to reduce the amount of work to stay within the budget. It's quite a different approach. Phase 1, our hands are tied. Phase 2, I view it that the budget is now tied, and we adjust the scope to stay within that budget. So and that was the reason for the restructure. Move the discretionary things into phase 2, and phase 1 is the minimum that we have to do, and whatever cost it is what it is, which is where we are today. So that's the purpose of this report, and I think with that I'll actually stop there and throw it open to Council for questions. Be happy to take any and all questions. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Brown?
Thank you, and thanks again, Paul, for keeping this whole thing moving forward. I just, mostly for the public's information, want to state the number we started with and where we've come to on the budget for this project. I believe we
Do you want to
started.
state that, or you'd like me to state
No,
that?
I'd like you to say it,
Okay.
because I'm not sure what the original number was, but I think it was far less than where
So
we're at.
on page 5 of my report, or page 20 of your agenda package, is table 1, the budget and cost estimating summary, as at the 31st of August. The first column there, actually the second column, 2018 LWMP. That set our original budget, and the bottom line there, 9.7 million. So back then, based on what we thought we needed to do, we came up with that number. We applied for funding on that basis and carried through. As we've gone into our detailed design and we have a better idea of what's what, the budget becomes more defined. It's we're actually not too far off on the original equipment side of it. What we thought we'd need back in then, 3.08 million, and here we are. We think we're going to end up at 3.5 on purchased equipment. Amazingly, it hasn't inflated that much. The actual construction side, what it takes to dig dirt and pour concrete and all the rest of it, unfortunately, that's really what has changed. And at the time, back then, we couldn't estimate it much better because we didn't have a detailed design to work to. So we've gone from 9.7, our estimate currently forecast cost to complete 11.4, and adding in a contingency, we had a contingency as part of that original 9.7. We have it as part here. Brings us to 12.41. So that's a 25% roughly increase.
Thank you. I just think that's an important thing for people to understand. So in the it's the news that Comox First Nation is willing to support is fantastic. Thank you for your work there. And I have I'm wondering about the second. So in the second phase. Phase 2 project budget on page 24, the habitat enhancement and recreation trails. That could be, if we had to reduce the scope on those two things, we could do some fundraising, like community fundraising for that project, those projects, because they could be ongoing things, right?
Yes, and that's absolutely true. There's also, a year ago I would have said there's a possibility of chasing additional grant funding. In the timeline that we're looking to do this, to execute it next summer, I don't think that's realistic, because any of the Sydney government grant programs these days take a year to play out. So some secondary sources, yes, on those couple of items. And I think as we go through the preliminary design of that over the winter, we can define better, exactly what's going to be required. Particularly on the trails part, I hope that a lot of that ends up being that the trail part is putting some gravel or crusher dust and so on top of the areas where we've already done work to make it a walking trail. Not that we're going to go and create a new trail in the middle of nowhere just for the sake of it.
Right. Okay, and then my other question is probably for Michelle. So just wondering about the reserve funding and what that leaves in the reserve that we're pulling that from.
So we did transfer some DCCs to the reserve, and so our balance is at $3 million, but we do have other like that takes care of water as well as sewers. So we've allocated about 2.1 million of that to the project with this amendment, and it really should stay there. But then we could look at priorities if anything else goes wrong.
Okay.
And that's still about a $200 parcel charge as well for the $4.4 million borrowing
Right. Okay.
eventually.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown, thank you very much. Councillor Sproul?
Yes, this hasn't been mentioned for a while, but are we still getting fined or being threatened with fines?
Oh, we are not being fined as we speak. The agreement, the consent order that it was called, we did pay the 45. Basically, we paid the first half of it. 50? 15. Oh, okay. I stand corrected. So we had to pay some. The remainder is contingent upon Cumberland getting this work done and also getting the LWMP completed and registered with the province by end of 2025. And if we haven't done that, then the second part of the fine comes into play. We're still out of compliance on many things, and effectively we've been given immunity, as the TV show would say, until then, right? So we're still out of compliance. They still sort of retain the official authority to come in and say, you're out of compliance, we're going to fine you, but the agreement was they'll hold off pending completion of the works and basically upgrading our authorisation from this old permit to the current regulations. That's what the Stage 3 Liquid Waste Management Plan process will do. So, long-winded answer, but no, we're not being fined today.
Is that your only question, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Nice to see you again. Your candor and competence make it easier for these budget amendments. I really like the report, other than the bad news. After being on the advisory committee, it kind of feels like a bit of humor here after knowing you for a little bit, talking about the construction delays in May being caused by hydraulic redesign from the gravity flow to the pump flow, and then the changed locations and hydraulic arrangements of all major components. So I found the humor in that, so thank you for knowing how dry you are. And that was a nice one. There's a very succinct way of describing our changes that we're going through, so I appreciated that one.
There is a phrase, pardon me, there's a phrase that's sometimes used, that's okay, it only changes everything.
Exactly. So
And that's pretty much where we're at.
I appreciated how, it's just a couple lines to say all the things, so thanks for that. Good to hear that we're in shape with our funding completion dates versus our funding run-out dates. That's good news on there. Thankful to staff again for adjusting the rates all the way up to make this a little bit easier for the community to accept when we have to start charging some more for this, and also just nice to get a bit of a break with the new configuration of the effluent wetland as well. So at least there's some happy news at the end of it. So just really appreciate your work and looking forward to this getting done, and it's getting done pretty quick compared to how long as we've been working at this process now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It will go very quick once we actually get into the ground.
Yeah, like 8 years to then in 1 year. Yeah.
Councillor Kettler?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Paul. Maybe I could just walk it back a little bit to the history of the project and the proposal, I guess, from the regional district that we join a regional system. And at that time, there was the private-public partnerships on the table, and the risk, I guess, of having this our system publicly or privately owned instead of publicly owned. The regional district system was lacking a few key things as far as considerations for the environment. If we were to put all of our wastewater into their system, there would be none remaining for Maple Creek and the Trent, where we make up most of the water in the dry months of the Trent. So that was never a consideration, and so that was a big reason why we wanted to go with our own system. And that, and the fact that we certainly promote eco assets here and wanted to upgrade the lagoon as opposed to putting in a whole bunch of hard gray infrastructure. Now, that said, it is a difficult process to go on our own and create something new, including the reed beds, and that will treat this effluent for pharmaceuticals, which is a higher level of treatment than anybody else seems to be doing in the province. So that will be wonderful. But yes, it does take time, and there are lots of revisions and things that we need to go through to get to that point. So I really appreciate your work and doing all of those things, taking into account the new climate that we're in and the immense amount of rainfall that we experienced over the last few years that did end up having to change the configuration. On top of that, all of the inflation and distribution issues, all of those things that have presented challenges for all infrastructure projects. So thanks for hanging in there. And and yes, I see that we're going to have to spend a little more, but that's not unusual these days. And I think it's still a project that the community has supported right from the beginning, and I'm happy to see it go through. So thanks so much.
Thank you. If I may respond to a couple of things in that, because I think there are some important points. One of the shortcomings of the South Sewer project was that it wouldn't take Cumberland's full winter flow, right? It was only going to be the first 2,500 cubic metres a day, and last November, it was beyond our ability to measure it accurately, but as far as we can tell, we were over 20,000 that day. So it still left Cumberland with the obligation of doing something with these excess wet weather winter flows beyond 2,500. Our current system is designed for the first 3,600 to give it full treatment and full disinfection, and we give full disinfection to everything else. So Cumberland still had to do that. the point about withdrawing it from the river, as I was driving up here this morning, I stopped at the Trent River Bridge and walked down to have a look at the river, and it isn't quite as low as what it was in 2017 when I took my famous photo of a canning jar of water right next to a stream width that was 6 inches wide, but it wasn't much more. And so right now the flow I observed there at Highway 19 was less than what I can see going over the weir of the lagoons. So yeah, if we were sending that today to the South Sewer, the lower Trent would be extremely dry. So I maintain that that's been a good move environmentally. And then the comment about grey infrastructure, it wasn't at the time when we were doing the LWMP, we did what we thought was, well, we had our consultants, the best development of the three options we had, this option, the upgraded lagoon, the couple of flavours of mechanical treatment plant, the grey infrastructure. And here we are, it's the grey part where we're seeing the budget increases. If we were doing a full mechanical treatment plant where it's all grey part, we'd be in the same boat as Powell River and Tofino and so on. Powell River's treatment plant is north of 55 million for the treatment plant. The whole project with conveyance and whatever is over 80. So it's, I think that decision, even though we've got rising cost escalation on the grey part that we have, if we'd had a lot more grey infrastructure, we'd have a lot more cost increase. So those lagoons built once continue to provide value, and they will continue to provide value in the future. So I'm confident on the path we're going.
Me too.
I think we'll all join with that. Well, thank you very much, Paul. There's just two, and I'm really pleased that you did address climate change and the implications of it, and the minimizing of use of concrete in this project. It's making a huge difference to the project.
And we're still working on that as we go through the design phase to minimize the amount of concrete. I don't win every discussion on that topic, but it's still a part of it. So,
Okay.
if I can make one note before any further questions or it goes to a vote, I did discover a typo in my report, which I want to point out for the benefit of council, because you might get a question about it later. Table 4 on page 23, the Phase 2 project components. The line item, MLC weirs and fishways, and it had an original budget of 100 and then it says a revised budget of 900. That is not correct. It's meant to be a revised budget of 90. Right? The budget for that item didn't increase ninefold. It's gone down by, I've just nominally decreased it by 10%. That's our scope reductions. The total at the bottom, 4360, is correct, but just for the record, that line item should read 90, not 900, and then those numbers are consistent. So, just so that you know when you're in approving this report, that's the way it's meant to be.
Okay, thank you. And I have walked the trails many times down there, and it's a beautiful short walk from one end to the other. And you've done a fine job. Thank you.
Thank you. I think part of the credit goes to
Our
these folks
staff.
here when it comes to the trails, but we're happy to have that part done.
Public Works and Parks. Partner in that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, Council, there's a number of recommendations there.
I'll move the council approve the additional expenditure of up to $2,710,000 for Phase 1 wastewater upgrade project, with $1,550,000 to be funded through sewer and water infrastructure asset replacement reserve, and $1,160,000 to be funded through GMF borrowing grant. And that council, I move that council approve the expenditure of up to $650,000 for Phase 2 wastewater upgrade project pre-construction program, with $195,000 to be funded through sewer and water infrastructure asset replacement reserve, and $455,000 to be funded through GMF borrowing grant. And that council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2022-2026 financial plan bylaw to reflect these expenditures.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
So there's 2 more
Yes,
recommendations there.
excuse me, yes.
Wow, there's that many. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
keep going.
Should I keep going?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Anyone else want to turn? No?
I think he ran out of breath.
Pausing for thumbs up. Okay, move the council approve an increase of $2,710,000 to the Maple Binders contract for the Phase 1 wastewater upgrade project, and that council authorize staff to enter into contracts totaling $650,000 to execute the Phase 2 wastewater upgrade project pre-construction program.
Seconder,
Second.
all in favor? Carried. Congratulations.
Thank you, and thanks for the trust and vote of confidence, and we look forward to getting this going.
So do we.
See you in October.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Next, that council receive the Development Variance and Heritage Alteration Permit Amendment Application 2714 Dunsmuir Avenue Report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this report is coming back to you after referral to the Heritage Committee, the application. And there's basically 2 requests in front of you for decision. One is a variance, a development variance, and the other is an amendment to a heritage alteration permit that was issued last fall towards the end of the last year. I'll start with the variance. The variance application is to facilitate a setback of 2.06 meters from the front lot line. In the VCMU1 zone, the maximum lot line setback is 1 meter, so they wish to set it back a little bit further to be able to meet the requirement by BC Housing to set back the building from the power line by 3 meters. So that's the variance application. I have pictures up, I'll show you later when I just talk about the design. So that variance is necessary because of the BC height requirement. And that due to that variance request, that also precipitates some design changes because the building obviously had to be set back. So the design changes are an amendment to the existing heritage alteration permit. So first of all, of course, the building is set back now, or the front part of the building, the prominent portion of the building. I'll just see if I have the, actually, yeah, you can see it on this streetscape here. So previously, that corner on Second Street, and Dunsmuir Avenue was at 0 lot line, so now it's set back 3 meters from the lot line, which actually is more similar to the current Cumberland Hotel, which also set back from the lot line. Maybe there's another image that shows it a little better. Oops. So yeah, so this setback. Ooh, where did my cursor go? Oh, it doesn't show very well. So the setback on that previously prominent corner is now reduced, increased. Sorry. And you can see what that does to the building. So when you're actually walking up the street now, that does mean that corner recedes a little bit visually from the streetscape. Whereas the overhang over the commercial units, the parapet, is still at the 0 lot line, as you can see out front there, and that lines up with the building next to it to create a transition visually from the adjacent building to this building. The other changes that are made to the application was the change of materials to the original design, which is in your comparison package, is quite a good. The architect team provide quite a good comparison from the original one. So there's now sort of a shingle type. It looks like a shingle. It's not a wood shingle on the entire facade on the corner, rather than 2 different materials as the previous design had. So now there's just a single one, just for consistency, less confusing to read the design. And then the other change to the previous building is that there's an addition of 6 units. So they are in the back of the building. Oh yeah, this isn't working too great, but the color that you can read it from the color that's a little sort of the brownish tones. That's some additional units. So that area of the building is now bumped out. So there's 2 additional units on each floor, which adds interest to the rear of the building actually through the windows. It was before it was just a blank, straight wall without any articulation, without windows, without balconies. So that's the main design changes. So the application went to the Heritage Committee for review, and they had some further requested changes to the design. And then the application is in the report. The Heritage Committee recommendation is in the report. They felt that the Second Street could be a little bit more animated through the building because it's also commercial street. That was one request. They felt that the overhang, that's the result of the continuation of the second floor ceiling, a roof line into the building. That was previously kind of hanging a little bit. It felt a little bit odd, so they requested some design change there. And then also wanted more diverse colors. So the previous version that you saw had a really pale gray. I've got the previous design samples on the table here. So they wanted a more vibrant colors, color to reflect other buildings in Cumberland. And a recommendation also included a request to install electric vehicle plugins at each parking stalls in the building in recognition of a transition that we're expecting to more electric vehicle driving. So the team was quite receptive to all the suggestions that were made by the Heritage Committee. And as you can see, the building that we now have, they changed the color to evening blue, it's called. So that corner of the building, whoops, get on where you can see it best, is now, rather than kind of a beige color before, it's an evening blue color. And then the previously, bright orange stripe that vertical line that was going down and through the building is now like another tone of blue. And then the Heritage Committee also commented on the grid that was previously down below the commercial units below that overhang, which they said, well, it appreciated reference to other buildings, but they didn't want to see everything be the same either. So that's now the same sort of lighter color as on the ground floor around the corner on 2nd Street. So that's kind of cementitious panel, lighter color, which also brightens up that space. Yes, and then in addition, the architects also, added, sorry, excuse the race through this, added EV charging capability for level 2 on the inside wall of the building in the garage. There was previously only 1 EV charging stall. Now there's 8, and then they also added 14 level 1 chargers, just a regular plug-in for electric vehicles on the other side of the parkade. And then also upstairs on ground level, so if you look at this one to the lane, I don't know if you can, I wish the pointer was a little bit clearer, but the 4 parking spaces right at the top of the drawing there towards the lane, there's one space for people with the disabilities. We asked that be added on the outside of the building for potential customers. And then that also has EV charging capability. So there's 2 more level 2 chargers up front top. The other request that was made by the Heritage Committee was, the animation of 2nd Street. So that you can see in the same drawing here, there's a little patio was created on the side of the building on 2nd Street, and actually a door now that opens to that, which also has created a bit of visual interest when you're coming down 2nd Street towards Dunsmuir Avenue. So altogether, they've made quite a bit of effort to respond to the Heritage Committee recommendations. One of the questions was also to there's for the part of the building that has the overhang. Like I said previously, that kind of just hung in space a bit. It felt a bit uncomfortable. So there's now columns below that on the top left. Drawing, you can see that perhaps, or maybe it also shows here. So that shows more clearly the division between the units, and then it doesn't hang. They did not they did not pull out the wall as was discussed at the committee as a possible solution to that and provide recessed entrances, and that's because they had the maximum floor area ratio for the building, so that would have increased their floor area beyond what they permitted in the zone. Yeah, I mean, overall, staff believe this is an improvement over the previous design that we had, the previous HAB that was issued, but also the design that was previously presented. So the team really showed their interest in working with the committee and responding to committee requests. It was also requested to show that it's not going to be called the Eddy. So you can see on the bottom lower drawing, lower left image, the corner image, that the intent to call it the Cumberland after the Cumberland Hotel. So. And the commemoration plan will be as discussed before, part of the heritage alteration permit. So staff will review that plan with the committee. I think that's really the main points I wanted to make. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to review, answer.
Councillor Spruill, would you like to start?
I'm just going to think about it a bit more because oh no, sorry, I did bring my notes. Oh. Right, the vinyl frames, black vinyl frames, they're going to be aluminum on which? The upper floors. Just trying to think that.
Do you want us?
They are going to be the black vinyl frames. Black, I guess that's going to be it's not going to show up as a lot of black, but the metal siding on the side is corrugated metal, black corrugated metal siding, and it could be hot in the summer. I'm not sure whether that's acknowledged.
Yeah, so that did also come up at the Heritage Committee meeting, a concern about the black corrugated metal, and that's used in the recessed balcony area. So you can, yeah, I think maybe this, forget the cursor in the balcony. So there is some it to the outside. It may have a little micro effect on heating the balconies in the summer. It won't affect the inside of the building because of the insulation requirements under the building code. There is shading when the sun's the highest in the sky in the summer. There is shading on the balconies due to the overhangs. So I have asked this. This was discussed with the architect. So the black. And there's probably less likely people will sit on the balconies when it's the hottest outside. So they chose the black corrugated metal as a contrast to the blue. It makes the balconies kind of recede a little bit because they're darker from the street level, perceived to be darker. I know this came up as a question also the Heritage Committee. I mean, the applicants are open to changing that color, perhaps to charcoal, if that's desired. And we can make that, write that into the permit. That's not a problem. So if that's a big concern, but there's some shading due to the overhang on most of the balconies, and just the bottom part of the balcony would be hit by the sun, and the corrugated metal will be hit by the sun.
Thank you.
Do you want us to move on?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Kettler.
Thanks. Yeah, I also had a concern about the new metal siding as opposed to the faux wood siding that they had, the black faux wood siding. I personally would prefer the wood siding, wood-looking siding. I think that's a better fit. But I did want to thank the Heritage Committee because I think they put forward a lot of good suggestions that have now been incorporated, and I think it's a better end product now. And if you'll allow, I'd like to speak a little bit more to the broader issue of heritage in the village and sort of the difficulty that we face with implementing heritage protection. We've had a number of consultants come in and give us their best opinions on how we can implement things, and I think we've done all the things that we could up to the point of not spending a whole bunch of money, taxpayer money, on heritage itself, in the form of if we take away a level of a building that the developer is already expecting, and then put ourselves in the position of having to pay the lost revenue to that developer. So it's not a great position for us. I think everybody on council would like to see all of our heritage buildings restored to their original grandeur, but nobody is stepping up to do that. And so developers are what they are. They are working within the zoning. We have the commercial on the bottom. It is our commercial core. And they are addressing a piece of the housing spectrum. And people need housing. And I think for me personally, I'm looking at the environmental aspects of it, as in densification is the way that we're supposed to be building, as opposed to urban sprawl and a whole bunch of new single-family homes pushing out into the forest. With densification, you're using existing infrastructure, and so it's cheaper. You have walkability, so it's more environmentally friendly. I understand that it's difficult for people, the change, but it actually is sort of best practice that we're implementing here. Next to the environment, I would say housing. We are in a housing crisis, and again, this does fill part of the housing spectrum. Down the street, we have a different part of the housing spectrum in all those micro units that are besides seeds. And this one will be more in the range of affordable home ownership, hopefully some rental as well. And I think that they've tried to, you are building an apartment building. You can't make the old Cumberland Hotel, or you can't make this apartment building look like the old Cumberland Hotel, and it probably would be pretty strange if we did. And I think they've tried to meet what our Heritage Committee has put forward, including the commemoration to the old hotel within the building, and the form and character that has been put forward. So, yeah, I like the bike parking. I like the electric plug-ins. I personally liked the car elevator more than the geotech, the underground garage, and I'm still a little concerned about the geotech. And I do have a question about do they still need a blasting permit from us at some point, and when would that be coming?
Yeah, so my understanding is this would be part of the building permit when they put forward their building permit. So they don't need a separate blasting permit. We have a requirement for, or council has an opportunity to permit blasting as part of environmental development permit. And it's in your environmental DP permit. Blasting is specifically mentioned. But in the downtown core, there's no environmental DP, so this would the geotechnical requirements and reporting and the methodology and monitoring would have to be is reviewed at the time of building permit.
Okay.
So this particular, I understand the concern, and this particular company does do a lot of work actually in Victoria. it's a cautious approach. You kind of you do your first vibration, and you don't just do a vibration that can spread potentially much larger than you would want, and just hope for the best. So it's a graduated approach to try and not damage any of the adjacent buildings. But yeah, the village also has the ability, if we feel that the geotech report that will receive a building permit, if we don't feel we have the information we need, we can have it reviewed.
Yeah, so along those lines, they say that the best maximum peak particle velocity for blasting is the 10 millimeters per second. But then later they're saying that they're recommending 25, which is double and a half of what, I'm wondering, so who decides that part of what their maximum blasting threshold will be?
Yeah, I have discussed that with our engineering technologist, and I think it's something that we would take a careful look at. A building permit, is this sufficient? It seems like you're right. It's quite a big spread from one to the other, quite a big jump from one to the other. So that is definitely a potentially concern. So there may be, if we don't feel comfortable with that, we may get a peer review and get a second opinion on what should be done. And also have them outline their methodology of what's at the first blast. Is that going to be more smaller, and then perhaps you can measure how the vibrations, I'm not an expert on this, move through the material that we have here in Cumberland.
Okay, so that'll come at building permit stage.
The geotechnical requirements, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do you
Yes,
wanna-
Courtney?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add something to that it is really in the best interest of the contractors doing the blasting work to not be causing damage. If that occurs, then most likely there's going to be the insurance company of that building who that damage was caused to. Looking to the contractor to explain themselves and recover some costs. That's not the position any contractor wants to be in. They are definitely working so that they don't cause damage to other buildings. So that's something that we keep in mind as well, and to add to everything Karen said about the review we do at the building permit stage also. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Okay, so a few things. Thanks to Councillor Kettler for the review. Much appreciated. The way, just the contextualizing, because I think it's important for people to understand that we are asking for as much as we can here. And so I had similar concerns about the blasting, and so I will be making a motion to have a peer review of that. And I'm also wondering, do they have an engineer on site? Do we need to have an engineer on site? Do I need to include that in the peer review so that we have someone working in our interest there? I get what you've said about their interests as well, and that also clarified one of my questions, which was who pays if we do damage. So yeah, just wondering about the engineer on site. I think they say that they're going to have an engineer on site. Do we want to have our own person there, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really part of a heritage alteration permit, right? The geotechnical issues would be definitely part of a building permit. I mean, the liability is with, like Courtney said, is with them. So it's in their interest to have an engineer on site. I mean, they definitely do that in Victoria when they're working there, who monitors the blasts and the work. So if we get a peer review and it they support what we receive, I don't know that we would need a second engineer on site to be there.
Okay.
I think if the methodology is approved and is reviewed.
Okay, I'm willing to let that go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Also concerned about the jump from the safe level is 10 and they want to do 25, or whatever that measurement is. So I think the peer review would make us feel better about that, or make me feel better about that. I'm also concerned about the corrugated black metal wall. I have a corrugated metal roof that has faded quite dramatically since I've had it, and I'm worried about that, the giant black corrugated metal wall facing east. So as you come up Dunsmuir, we'll see that big metal side of the building. So just wanting to make sure that either we switch that back and do black, the faux wood siding, or just ensuring that that metal is not going to be faded and look terrible in 5 years or whatever, or there's some maintenance plan. I don't know what that looks like. I am also grateful for the electric plug-ins and the disability parking outside. I understand that just one of the units, Unit D, is accessible now. And I'm also curious, so part of my concern with this coming back as a heritage alteration amendment is that the scope of the project has changed dramatically. The design has changed, the number of units has changed, the size of the units has changed. We used to have a whole floor that was for differently abled people. There were a lot of significant changes, and there was no, so in the beginning, when the project came forward, there was an information session about the building, there was a public consultation about the building, there was information sent out to the neighbors about the building, and this building is totally different from that building. So I'm concerned that that information hasn't been shared appropriately, and that there was no public input to this phase outside of us and the Heritage Committee.
Yeah, as part of the Heritage Amendment application, you don't need to do a public meeting, so we didn't suggest at the last council meeting that might be that we might make that a requirement. Yeah, so I mean, it has been to the Heritage Committee. The initial design that they submitted, they were trying to stay more true to the old building. The color scheme was more or less the same, and then they changed it as a result of the comments by the Heritage Committee. The kind of how they treated that, they retained that overhang or that parapet. They made the mezzanine area a little bit more useful, actually, but you can actually now access it from the inside, above the super high ceilings on the first floor. But from the outside, they haven't changed that. They didn't change the window patterns. They still, they try to actually change as little as possible. And in a way, through the discussions with staff and also with the Heritage Committee, we all wanted this or that change to make a bit of an improvement to the building, which they have responded to. So I think I would say the initial design was probably closer to the original than what we have now.
Yeah, I'm not, when I'm talking about the changes, I'm not specifically talking about the color schemes and the cladding on the building. I'm talking about the interior of the building and the number of units. So we've gone from 15 to 21 units. And we've gone from a parkade that is an elevator to an entire floor underground. So to me, that's not a heritage alteration permit. That's a new DP because it's a different project. So if you could clarify that, how?
Yeah, so I mean, they've provided quite a bit of detail on the interior, but it's not, the heritage alteration permit doesn't actually deal with the interior design. So the number of units, they just have to meet what's in the zoning bylaw. Which they do. They've now maximized their floor area ratio. They're now at 2.0, which is what the zoning bylaw permits. The previous building was at 1.8 or something, I think, or 1.68 or whatever. They were just a little bit under. And they found when they did their financial analysis, they needed more units. So the addition of the units, so it's not really a matter of the HAP, anything interior. That's really a matter. It's a matter of the zoning, and they're still staying within the 2.0.
Right. So do we know how big these units are?
The square footage of each unit. You know what?
Like they're all one bedrooms?
No, there's a number of 2 bedrooms.
Courtney?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just want to make a clarification. So those interior things, while they're, you know, significant changes to the building, those are things that are dealt with in the zoning bylaw. And so the applicant doesn't need any additional approvals from council when they're strictly following the zoning bylaw in terms of the floor area ratio and number of units, for example. So that's why it's not part of the HAP. It's not part of any approval of council because it's already approved in the zoning bylaw, those things.
Okay, and the same would have been true when the DP came to us in the first place?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So I also noticed there's an encroachment, so on page 63, I can't tell which building is encroaching on which, but as we know, some buildings encroach in our downtown core. So just wanting to, you know, when the other build down the street and on the other side was happening, there was an excavation that went straight down the side of the heritage building next to it, which I felt was not safe for that heritage building and could likely cause damage. So I want to make sure that we're not doing that again. But yeah, so that's another
Yeah,
concern.
we for that building, I think I recall that we sent the building inspector out when there was that excavation, and they did confirm that it had been done in accordance with what the engineer
Okay.
said was okay to do. So I would assume the same would happen here. It's a requirement to not, you know, endanger the adjacent building. The parkade, by the way, doesn't go all the way. It doesn't cover the entire footprint of the building, so the parkade, so they don't have to dig down quite as deep, right
That
adjacent to the
side.
building on that side.
Okay.
So that should help as well. The parkade doesn't cover the entire footprint of the building. It's set back from that adjacent building.
Okay. And then the other thing is there is a sewer line right under there, and I'm not clear on who's responsible for dealing with that. So where they're going to blast, there's a sewer line, so.
Yeah, so the neighboring building, and we have brought that to the attention, and the owner knows this, neighboring building, their line goes underneath this property, and it's something they need to resolve together with the owner. And they've had discussions. They've tried to reach out to that owner. I haven't got an update on whether it's been resolved or not, but ultimately, they have assured me that they've contacted them several times to try and see what can be done about that. It's really the responsibility of the adjacent owner to move their line underneath their property and hook up where their hookups are on Dunsmuir, rather than go over that adjacent property. So they've been given notice, so they've had a lot of notice to know that what they need to be doing,
Right,
and there have been an attempt to have discussions with that neighbor.
okay.
Yeah. So that's the line that serves the adjacent building.
Okay, and then my other set of concerns is around the storm water management for it. So as far as I can tell, it's based on 10-year storm events. So 10 years at 15-minute storm events, and I'm pretty sure that's not a thing that happens normally anymore. I think things are quite more dramatic than that. So and their tank is only able to store a certain amount. And so what happens when we have a November like we had last year and that tank can't absorb all that water? What happens?
Then it goes directly into our storm drain, so that whatever it can't be, the first flush that goes into the tank
Yeah.
can't be, if it's already full, then it just goes directly into our storm drain. But there's a pump, right? So they pump from that. The idea is if there's a heavy storm event that fills the tank, and then if the storm subsides, the tank, there's time to pump that out and pump that into the storm drain over a longer period of time, so not to overload the system. But if the rain just continues and continues, then eventually, it would just overflow directly into the storm
Right.
drain.
And so our bylaw requires them to only look at 10-year storm events?
Operations reviewed that, so this is not my area of expertise. Operations did review the stormwater management plan. Did request some changes. They were initially, there wasn't, a tank wasn't suggested, so they've reviewed that and they're satisfied with this. And then the final, once we get to building permit again, there's a final, if anything turns up to be a little bit different, that can be changed. But yeah, so it's met the requirements. It's met our requirements, and operations has reviewed it.
Okay. I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. Yeah, well, this is obviously, we all know, it's a very difficult thing to deal with in this community moving forward. I've spent many nights at the Cumberland Hotel. Like everyone, I wish that there was enough business to support that building so that the upkeep and the renovations could have kept up to date, but that isn't what happened. There's no benefactor moving forward to save this heritage building, unfortunately. Yeah, the development process here is very thorough, quite an undertaking. I mean, when we're taking down a beloved building like this in the middle of town, it's going to be pretty difficult to move forward. We have bylaws in place to protect the values that we hold as a community. 2007 was when the Council of the Day decided that 4 stories was a reasonable amount of height for this village, obviously looking at best practices of the day, and now trying to deal with this situation. I imagine the council of that day and the village, what it looked like in 2007, and the dreams that these people had, that someday there would be 4-story buildings in Cumberland. And maybe in the day those people were really looking forward to the vibrant community that Cumberland has become. So those bylaws are in place for those protections. So now here we are. Our OCP update is next year. So we're at a place where I don't want to say our hands are tied. We have these bylaws moving forward that we have to allow these developers to work within. We've had a lot of open houses, input sessions, committee referrals. I really actually appreciate the developers. They have adjusting to what we are wanting to change. I really commend them for changing a lot of the Heritage Committee's recommendations have been fully implemented. I do like the new design changes. To be honest, I've had more people say nice things about this building than listening to the detractors. Looking at this picture right here, you can't tell me that the form and function doesn't fit within the street. Personally, I feel like it fits very well. I mean, everything changes. This is going to be a huge change. It's a massive part of our downtown, but moving forward, I really like the openness of the design. I like the changes from the Heritage Committee, the suggestion for the patio in the back of 2nd Street, opening up 2nd Street. That's going to be a lot busier someday, so I really like those changes. I like the underground parking. I mean, I share all the concerns the council does, but I'm really looking forward to them giving it a go. And we see how that works in this village. That's, I think, a really important step moving forward with development in this tiny little town, because we're going down and up, not too far out, hopefully. Yeah, and that's it. Moving forward, I'd like to just embrace the positives of this change. We can all be really sad about it, or we can embrace the positive, vibrant community we live in, accept the changes, try to work within them, and if the community really would like to make the changes necessary to our development process, the OCP update is a very good place to start, and I would love to implore our community to involve themselves more. I asked staff to bring the 3D printed building picture down here because I was possibly expecting a lot of pitchforks and fire and brimstone, considering what the internet is talking about these days. But none of those people have shown up to see what the design looks like in 3D. You can come into the village and look at it at any time. But moving forward, I support these changes. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I too had a concern about the metal and the color black. It does fade. And usually it doesn't take that many years to fade. So I'd like to see that change. I don't know if going to a charcoal would be easier, but I think we need to look at that that change in the design. I really like the design. I'm really glad that Hydro had issues with the previous development, and that it certainly brought a new person on board to design a better fit for the village, because I do think it adds to the village. And I think the housing component will help us a great deal. I like the idea that they've upgraded the parking and we'll have more parking than they thought. I do think that it's going to be a change, and it's going to be a hard change for some people. I enjoyed going to the Cumberland Hotel. I was a patron of theirs for years, and I was really, I knew it had been for sale for many years, and she tried to hang on as long as she could. I did talk to the ministry about the tools that we have in protecting our heritage, and I never really got a good answer back about them giving us more tools to help us protect it. Back in the day, when I remember when Dave Stevens sold the Ilo, it was looked that we should buy it, the village. There's no way the village can buy the building, because then we would, at the time we thought we'd be expected to buy the next building and the next building to save it, and we can't do it. This is actually the first building that we have actually lost in many, many years because of development. Most of the other, well, all the other ones were empty lots, and it didn't seem to hit the people as hard as this one with the Cumberland. And there's a lot of history there, so thank you. I'd also like to thank the Heritage Commission for their comments, for their dedication of looking at it from the scope that they needed to look at it. I think you made a lot of positive changes. So thank you. And I'm one of the people that are going to look out my bedroom window every day and see the new building. So, yeah, I also see the other two also. And it is a change for the village. And I will be supporting this. Oh, my other question is, what if we turned it down? What would happen?
Well, you can't. So if you turn down the heritage alteration permit amendment, you have to give a reason why, right? It's just like any development permit. It's a type of development permit. So you have to give the applicant an opportunity to amend the application, and you have to identify what they need to do to fit better with our guidelines. So you can't really turn down a heritage alteration permit or development permit. You have to say, well, you're not meeting this guideline. Go away, come back, and show us how you meet that. The variance, could you turn down the variance? Technically, you can turn down a variance application. It just means then you're not enabling developers to build to the 4 stories that are permitted in the zoning bylaw, because that required setback from the power line on the 2nd story, or they'd have to meet it differently. They could put the lower story up to the lot line and then set back starting on the 2nd story, which they have on the side, right? So it would be quite a redesign, which may or may not work too well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but yeah. Also, I do want to acknowledge, thank you, everybody. It's difficult and to see the Cumberland Hotel go, and I think it's challenging, and we've all experienced that through this review, to identify what is heritage, what's character, how do we preserve character. We don't have very prescriptive guidelines like maybe some other municipalities do, but we also don't have one single style of building. So this building does capture a few of the elements in other buildings, the shingles, which we have at the Riding Foes Hostel, the mullion pattern in the windows. It's still a modern building, but we don't have one style that is easily that you want to replicate all the time. So that's, I think, one of the exciting things, one of the challenges. It lends itself to diversity in design, which is great, but it also means it's harder to review these.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
I forgot in my notes here, this might be unpopular. I'm not a huge fan of the name the Cumberland, just to put that on the record. and I do like the color changes. So those are.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so I'm just going back to the corrugated metal siding. If we don't want that, would we send that back now and say, can you change this back to a wood faux siding?
So you have two options. If you know exactly what you want at this point, you could say that you approve the heritage alteration permit with the following change. Or you could say that the applicant bring back further amended application, or bring back an application with a design change to show a different color or material. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'd suggest, from what I've heard, it sounds like you might be able to provide enough direction at this point for the applicant to just communicate with staff about what change is made, and we make that change in the permit. It doesn't need to come back to council. If it's something clear, like definitely not corrugated metal, something that doesn't, absorb heat or reflect heat, if that meets your needs, that's probably something we can deal with at the staff level afterwards.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, council.
So do you still want a motion that we pass it, but with the amendment of not having the corrugated metal?
Yes, it'll still be in the resolution as a change.
Okay.
Okay, so somebody want to make a motion?
So I'll move that council approve the heritage alteration permit 2022-01 HAP for 2714 Dunsmuir Avenue. Properties legally described as Lot 1, Block 6, District Lot 21, Nelson District, Plan 522, and the west half of Lot 2, Block 6, District Lot 21, Nelson District, Plan 522, with a change from black corrugated metal on the east side of the building to a faux wood finish.
Do we want to specify color? Or whatever staff work out. I think they have because it could be charcoal or it could be, right? So.
To a non-metal finish?
Yeah, is
that better?
Is it the metal that is the problem, or is it the color? I mean, the metals come in all sorts of colors, so that's a very easy change. You can change it to a charcoal or dark brown or
So
whatever.
for me, it's the metal because the metal's going to
Me
fade.
too.
Metal.
Okay, that's
Something other than the metal.
okay. So what so you can kind of see.
Even if it was the same blue.
Or the recessed area, the balconies. It's really the recessed areas of the balcony or wherever there's the black metal to a full wood.
So my motion was specific to the east wall of the building. I'm not. I
see.
think I think that's shaded enough or covered enough to protect it. But I'm happy to.
Being I see. Sorry, when you come up the street.
It's that big black wall.
The big black wall, yeah.
Whoops. Yeah. I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. That's probably fairly easy, but not metal, but a full.
Yeah, so they had what they called a burnt wood look before, and not sure why they changed it, but that would certainly.
The material wasn't meeting the requirements for, I think, combustibility or non-combustibility rather. Yeah. So. Wow.
So yeah, a non-combustible faux wood.
Non-metal. Non-combustible, non-metal,
Putting this one back to staff.
differently
Refer it
colored.
back to staff. They know what we're
east
looking
wall.
for.
Just one
Okay.
question. The west side isn't. I thought we were talking about the black metal because of the heat, the extra heat. What about the western side of the building or the southwestern side? Is that heating and cooling?
So
Is
actually,
that-
this really.
Talking about this one because
Yeah,
of the
can you
fading
show
wood.
us?
Right. So,
This was a fading color.
So the recessed areas, these are actually not actually balconies. These are help to be decoration. But the recessed areas are all corrugated black metal. And then this wall is also the black corrugated metal. So Councillor Brown was talking. We're talking about this wall that you might see from coming up the street. It's very dark, I guess. And then there's a recessed area. So and then you're saying this is the west side. So the area within the balconies, the recessed area, is also that
Material
black
that would
corrugated
accept
metal.
a mural.
Don't even.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, we're getting a little carried away
I
here.
see
We need to
Kevin's
get back
hand
on.
raised in his hand. Sorry, retract
Okay.
that.
So,
Yeah, if we remove the metal on the big wall, does that then change sort of, because they would obviously be sort of picking up on that design on the interior, so might as well change it all to the same material.
yeah, that makes more sense to change it everywhere instead of the corrugated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
That sounds
we could
like
bring
more
it
of
back
a-
October 3rd. Maybe that's the best.
Does that really change the design of the building?
I would think so.
It might change the costs as well.
Yeah, we're just trying to be able to craft something on the fly that, without being able to consult with the designers right now, that would, hopefully not require coming back to council. So we're just sort of taking a moment here to think about how that might work.
So it seems like the corrugated metal on the east side, that's pretty clear. Everyone's in support not to have black corrugated metal there, but a faux wood type look. That's easy, relatively easy. We can figure that out. Then the area set back is the corrugated metal. You want more, just a different, a lighter tone of the charcoal, or but still corrugated metal,
Well, I
or,
think
or
what-
whatever they come up with on this siding, also kind of a wood. It could look okay.
I think what Council Sproul was saying was that that's where the sun is going to be hitting, and it would be heating up for the people living in those areas, so,
On the west side.
yeah.
I don't know, Councillor Brown, you have the corrugated metal in your place, you said?
On my roof, yeah.
Oh, does that really heat up in this sun? Then I would be concerned about children or anybody touching that during the day when it's so hot. Wouldn't that be a safety issue for people?
So what the architect has explained, because there's some overhang when the suns are high in the sky, it'll hit the lower part of that.
Sideways on this way. Like that's the separator, right? Like the
Yeah, then there's also separators I guess there's separators, in here. Yeah, there are separators in here.
was clad as, okay, I thought it was just the separation.
Yeah, and that's the same wood cladding, or full wood cladding as here,
Yeah.
which is the vertical wood.
Okay, we have to make a decision, so what
Right,
would you
sorry.
like?
Yeah.
Through the mayor, can I just make a suggestion? It sounds like Councillor Brown could just amend her resolution slightly to say all of the black corrugated metal be changed, because I think that's where you're going with
Yeah.
this
Yes.
conversation. I think you could quickly,
To a different material.
Well, I don't know.
okay.
Like on the decks and stuff, they don't need faux wood there, I don't think. I don't know. Not
I think they
necessarily.
do.
I think
Okay, maybe
I can
not.
change the motion to not be faux wood, to not be specific, to be whatever they,
Just change the corrugated metal.
just not
throughout the
corrugated metal.
building. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
And if
Okay.
it's too much of a change, then I guess it
It'll
comes
have to
back.
come back.
right?
Financially, I'm
Yeah.
imagining that would be quite a
Yeah.
difference.
Rachel, do you have that?
I think I do. I can read the proposed motion that council approve the heritage alteration permit, and I won't read the legal descriptions, with a change to change the black corrugated metal on all outer surfaces. Is that
Okay.
sufficient?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay?
Change the black corrugated metal on all outer surfaces.
Okay.
But it's not color specific, is it?
No.
Okay.
And then that council approved development variance permit 2022-07 DV to vary zoning bylaw number 1027, 2014 to increase the front maximum setback for the proposed development to 2.15 meters for 50% of the facade.
And
And-
can that be a separate motion?
Sure.
You want to make about the peer review?
Oh, yep, sure.
Okay, so seconder,
Second.
all in favor? Carried.
And then that council recommend a peer review of the geotechnical report for the project. Good enough?
Seconder?
Can I just ask if that was something that was being considered for a building permit anyway?
Well, I guess if operations staff felt uncomfortable with the quality of the geotechnical report or the methodology proposed for monitoring during the blasting, then we could be requesting a peer review for sure if they felt comfortable with it. Visek is a very reputable company, so if they were comfortable with it, they wouldn't automatically request that.
Okay.
I do think it's fair, since it's the first underground parking that we're having on Dunsmuir, that we do have an extra set of eyes on there, and give us that extra expertise. So,
Yeah, and I'll support it because I would rather do this than have something happen because we didn't. I think it's a precautionary.
Who pays for that?
They do.
Sweet.
Okay. So who would like to second the motion? Oh, sorry, Rachel?
Can I just confirm the motion is that council require a peer review for the blasting under a building permit issued for the development at 2714 Dunsmuir Avenue? Is that?
A peer review of the geotechnical review.
yeah.
Geotechnical report.
Geotechnical report. Thank you.
Okay, seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, that council received the, sorry?
Variance? Did we do the variance?
Yeah.
As part of the other?
What?
We did it all.
That was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Next,
I'm acting.
that council received the fire service review report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
In here, I thought everyone was here for the fire service report. But oh, we are.
We are.
Okay, well, good evening, Mayor and Council. So, as you guys are aware, this report has previously come forward, but it was deemed to be in the best interest of the public to also have it come forward in a public session. So it's a very comprehensive report, but it's the results of a consultant who has significant history in fire service review, completing an analysis of the Cumberland Fire Department. And it speaks to multiple different categories or attributes of the service, including the emergency program, as well as the changing regulatory environment that the provision of a fire service is going through right now. So I won't go into all the detail, but everything from recommendations around capital infrastructure, very complimentary of the new fire hall, but the need for continuous investment in apparatus and training props and whatnot, to ensuring regulatory compliance with training and operational guidelines, inspections, etc. A review of all the service agreements we have with the CVRD, mutual aid agreement with partner municipalities in the valley, as well as the bylaw and other policy related to. So there's a lot in the report, but essentially the recommendation is that we use this as a roadmap for planning for everything from recruitment for personnel to capital infrastructure and budget planning, to how operationally we can better conform to the regulatory requirements when it comes to training and documentation and whatnot. So, any questions? Let me know.
Yes. Councillor Sullivan, did you want to start?
Yeah, that's the most comprehensive report of all time. First of all, I'm not even like there might have to be a new word for comprehensive for this. Just one major question, or two questions, or a concern. In the middle here it says the maximum current building height is only 4 stories, though there is currently approval for a single 5-story building. So I read that and kind of had a little bit of a panic considering what we're talking about today. So that's just on page 124. I don't know don't think we have 5-story buildings. And
It's
I
the
guess
one we
for-
just approved,
well, I don't know.
because
We
the
didn't-
stuff
I
sticks
understand,
out on it.
Excuse me.
I understand that part, but anyway, I don't think the language is necessary for 5 stories anyhow. Also, the recommendations are as long as some of our agendas, so I assume that staff will be pacing through those and putting them in a list that is most easy to tackle.
Yeah, the recommendation is for the recommendations that have budgetary implications to come forward in the financial planning process. Some of them are operational and have already begun to be implemented, and others are for future projects as some of the agreements expire. This just gives us a starting point for us to consider in review and future agreements that would come forward to council. And speaking to the 5-story, I would just comment that this review was initiated back in the winter, and at that time, I think there was a development. And this is not a planner who wrote this. This would have been someone who just looked at some drawings and offered an opinion on something. So certainly outside of his area of expertise, like what's specific to our zoning bylaw. So probably just in a little error that we could correct. But thank you.
Extra sensitive to the language these days. Yeah, thanks.
Following the last discussion, I can understand. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, so it is a stealthy report and a very long list of recommendations that is concerning. So I'm wondering, I understand that we can now use DCCs to fund fire capital. That was a recent change, was it not? No.
Through the Mayor Community Works Funds, do you think you're thinking?
No, I thought they changed DCCs so that they could then be used
I
for.
think they're still talking about that.
Yeah, I think
think
that's
it's
still in
still in
process.
process.
Yeah,
Process.
they're
It hasn't
thinking
been
about that.
approved. We
Okay.
would know that by if it was.
Well, it's too late for us, but I'm hoping that these, like the capital things that we need to do, the training, ops, and all of that stuff, could that be covered should the DCCs allow for?
I don't know enough about what's being proposed,
Okay.
but yeah, I thought it might have been fire buildings, but maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If they do approve it, there'll be very tight lines of what you can use the money for and what you can't.
Okay. That was my only question or concern.
Okay, Councillor Kettler?
Thanks. Yeah, there's a lot in here, and I think there was a little bit of an effort to sort of prioritize these things, which is good. I think we will certainly have to do that. There's a lot of change in fire departments all over the province with the move from the Fire Service Act to the Fire Safety Act and the different levels of training that are needed and the different type of inspection process. And I think, fire service in general has really come to the top of the list because of emergency response issues with COVID and all of the things that we're dealing with the drug crisis, that our fire service is performing a lot more duties than they were in the past. And as we heard from our fire chief, a ton more documentation and record keeping for all those things. And so, I think they operated in a certain way for a very long time, and it's kind of all coming to a head, all these changes, all these new demands, all these things. So that is part of why I guess it is such a comprehensive report. But all these things, as I can tell, are very necessary. One of the things, of course, that we might get pushed on through the regional district is to switch from being a contract service for the emergency program to a service participant. So I'm not sure where that is in the list of priorities, but I'm sure in the next term the CBRD will be coming back to the village with that proposal. And yeah, I support everything that's in here, and I hope that we can work through it together to yeah, pick out the things that we can prioritize, so it's not so overwhelming, because it kind of feels like that right now.
Councillor Sproul?
Yeah, I think this is a really positive report. I mean, I can't imagine writing anything like this. It would take weeks. But noting that to have improved retention of firefighters, you have to keep it interesting and to provide training, because then people realize how valuable the job is. And then the other positive information in here is how well led our fire department, and from we have a modern building, and we have an appropriate level of equipment and trucks. So that's all good. There's going to be a lot of stuff about mutual aid and how to sort that out, and anyway, there's a lot in this, and I think it's positive, and I think we are well set up for the future of more growth in Cumberland by what we have.
Well, I agree with everybody else. It took a lot of time to read this report. It was very interesting, but I do have a concern because of all the training that has to be done now for our volunteer fire department. I think it's making it very costly for an individual if they're holding down a job and volunteering in the fire department. I think the days of the volunteer are going to be numbered. It might take a few years, but I think that's where it's heading because of the amount of specialized training that's going to be involved in training individuals. So that is a concern I have. But I also understand that it's needed. We have sort of been not keeping up. Lots of smaller departments haven't been keeping up with all the rules and regulations that are being implemented, but we need to. And I think this was a timely report for us and our fire department. So what is your pleasure?
Move that council direct staff to consider the recommendations of the Fire Service Review Report in the 2023-2027 financial planning process.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the Local Government Climate Action Program report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
So earlier this year, the province announced a new funding program called the Local Government Climate Action Program. It provides to Village of Cumberland about $72,000 each year for 3 years for a total of $216,000. And these funds are being provided to all local governments. It's not something we need to apply for, but what we do need to do is promise through a signed attestation form that these funds will be used towards climate action. The purpose of this report is simply to get council direction to post this attestation form online on our website, as well as our responses to the program survey, which was a requirement for us to receive these funds. The survey is attached to this report and outlines some of our current and recent climate initiatives. Future discussion will occur through the budget process about specifically how these funds could be used.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so is it fair to say that we have a broader choice of ways to spend these dollars than we did in the past in the CARET program?
That's a good question. Yeah, do you have an answer to that?
I want to say yes.
We want you to say yes.
But definitely we'll come back to you if that's not, like, we're going to come back to you anyway.
Yeah.
But yes,
I mean, there's so many
believe that
things
there
that
is
we could
different-
be using
yes,
this for.
that's
That
right.
we're a myriad of things that could be used that we're moving toward climate action.
I mean, in the past, the funding was just the $4,500 that we put
Right.
towards.
Yeah.
So it was very unconditional, but it wasn't enough. So this is definitely, I would say.
And so we're still going to be reducing our corporate emissions. And are we still going to participate in a carbon offset program with these dollars? Or is that something we're discussing in the future as well?
We will inventory our carbon. We will start again because we'll get a better tool, less administratively harder one to use. And so we will start doing that, and then that information will come to council, and at that point you can decide how you would like to use these dollars, because you still have $7,500 from 2021 that needs to be carried forward, and you still have $2,700 each year. However, 20%, the village needs to add 20% to these funds to spend on carbon projects. And understanding you can probably purchase offsets, but you can also use those funds for projects that will reduce emissions, which might be your choice instead. Whereas before we wanted to be completely zero as part of the program, so we'll bring those regulations back to you though, and you can make a choice.
Sorry, may I ask, so, for example, would we be able to use forests that have been acquired by the community as an offset? We couldn't do that before.
Yeah, the offset rules haven't changed. So, but we'll bring back the rules on whether or not you need to purchase offsets or not, or you can use the funds differently.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is great. It sounds to me like, well, we can use, the money has to be spent by 2025, so we can use all of it at once, or we can use bits of it each year, or whatever. So that gives a lot more freedom. So I'm really looking forward to making some proactive climate action happen with this. I just wanted to speak to the survey, which I imagine was challenging to fill out. So number 11 on page 274, there's a what data would be most valuable to your local government in decision making related to the creation of complete compact communities. And your note is data on the contribution to affordable housing versus enabling investment properties. And I just don't understand what that means.
I think we probably could have worded that a little bit differently to be more clear.
I'm thinking it might have been one of the choices you get to pick.
Oh.
And so,
it was like okay.
like, do you want this,
A
and
drop-down menu.
it was probably the best choice for us
Okay.
out of
Okay.
the choices.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Good. And then the next one, 12, it's asking us how has your local government or modern treaty nation taken any actions to address climate impacts? And there's a list, and where we talk about the dam, so we're upgrading the dam, which is great, but I understand that we're also upgrading the dam to be ready to produce hydro, so we could also include that there, because I think that's a good climate action thing. If that's the idea of the survey, is to collect all the good stuff we're doing.
Through the mayor, that is a good suggestion, and we'll save that for next survey because we've already submitted
It's already
it.
submitted, okay.
Sorry. We'll try
can
to
add it
to
next
be more proactive in bringing this forward before we submit.
Thank you.
Quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. My question is, and I've never been able to get an answer for it at this point, and I don't assume they have one now. How far back can we go to what we've been doing for, say, the last 10 years towards climate change? How far do we get to go back?
Do you mean in in responses to this survey? Yeah, interestingly, this survey really often focused on very recent initiatives. They specifically asked for that. So
Are we starting from square one as of, say, 2022? Or can we go back and claim all those things that we've already done predating that?
what we tried to do is highlight the things that we've done in past years as much as possible, because I think those are really important, really valuable. We do actually put more about that on our website under climate action. This funding program is really wants to keep the momentum going, and I think that's why they focus on really recent initiatives. They want us to continue to make changes and not feel that, so no local government feels like it's done. They've addressed climate.
Yeah, I see that's important, but the overall picture is what we've done for so long, and that we can continue our momentum. Absolutely right, but I don't think we should lose track of what we already have gained. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay.
So I'll move that council direct staff to post on the village website a completed and signed attestation form to confirm all local government climate action programs were or will be used towards climate action, and a completed PDF version of the required program survey.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the Municipal Finance Authority financing for 2022 vehicle equipment purchase report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, thank you. So this report is a report you've seen in the past. When we purchase vehicles or equipment for the village, we often use Municipal Finance Authority equipment loan borrowing for it. It's a short-term variable rate borrowing. So for the bylaw van, it was in the budget to use this type of debt. And so now I am just asking council to make a motion that would be needed by MFA for this borrowing. So using the $65,000 budget, which final costs aren't confirmed yet. It might be less than that, but I've used the 65. You would have just under $5,700 interest over the 5 years on that debt. And that's using an interest rate of 3.34%, which is what, at the time of writing the report, the rate was. It's changing every day. But yeah, other than that, I'm just looking for a council resolution that would be adequate for the Municipal Finance Authority.
Questions? Yes?
Thank you. So given the conversation we just had, I see that I think the vehicle that we've found is one of the ones that turns off, has the idle shutdown. Is that the best we could do? There wasn't an electric or hybrid and do we have a policy that when we replace vehicles, we're looking for those, or does that future work?
That's a very good question. No, we don't have a policy, and that wasn't considered.
I'm not sure you can get an electric vehicle right now. I know we are trying, and
Pretty sure no.
we're like 3 years out.
Yikes.
But yeah.
We did
so-
actually have to purchase secondhand as well because there wasn't a market that we
Yeah.
could find a new
Okay.
one at the time.
But we do need a policy that asks us to do that. Thank you.
Someone like to move?
Move the council approve the short-term borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority through the equipment financing program up to $65,000 for the purchase of a 2022 bylaw enforcement van for a 5-year term that must be repaid in 5 years.
Seconder? Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Bylaws. That council receive the 2023 permissive tax exemption report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, so this is your permissive tax exemption bylaw for consideration tonight. It has the same properties that it's had for years, based on your financial plan policy on permissive tax exemptions. It's the 2 churches in town and the museum, which is occupied as a 0 rate lease. And so really not much change. I'm just recommending council give the first 3 readings to this bylaw, and so it can be provided to BCA assessment before October 31st.
So I'll move that council consider first, second, and third reading of the permissive tax exemption 2023 bylaw number 1177, 2022.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, we have that council received the zoning amendment 4699 Cumberland Road.
Oversee.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to introduce bylaw 1176 to amend zoning bylaw number 1027 to increase the maximum gross floor area, or GFA, and height of a substantially completed accessory building located at 4699 Cumberland Road. This rezoning is initiated by the village to address an oversight in 2018 when plans were initially reviewed for a building permit application. And just a little bit of background, in 2018, the property owner applied for a building permit for an accessory building. Unfortunately, at that time, the application was reviewed by village staff as an R3 property instead of an R1A, resulting in the accessory building being both over height and over the permitted maximum gross floor area. In the village of Cumberland, GFA for some buildings can be varied, such as accessory dwelling units. As the zoning bylaw considers the GFA of some types of buildings to be a measure of density and some not. To allow this accessory building to remain with a GFA that exceeds the maximum permitted, rezoning is the only option. To simplify the process, staff included the increased height of the accessory building to the proposed zoning amendment instead of having a separate development variance permit application at the same time. Zoning amendment bylaw number 1176 is prepared for council's consideration as a property-specific zoning. The bylaw would only affect this property and is not being proposed as a change to the entire zone. The rezoning would only apply to the accessory building that is substantially under construction at this time and would not apply to any future accessory buildings, including on potential future subdivided lots. Staff have identified minimal land use impacts to rezoning as the property is on the border of the R3 zone, where an accessory building of the size is permitted, and the boundary is mid-block. And that is it.
Thank you. Any questions? No, seeing done, then someone like to make the motion?
I move the council give first and second reading to the bylaw 1176, cited as zoning amendment bylaw number 1176, 2022.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. No new business. Notice, motions, and announcements. Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee, September 21st. Doesn't have a time. Public hearing, accessory dwelling units modernization bylaw, September 26th, 7 p.m. And Committee of the Whole and regular council meeting on October the 3rd. Question period. If a member of the public would like to ask a question, please email info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period.
Isn't it at 10 a.m., that meeting? Yeah.
I don't know.
Homelessness and affordable housing?
It was today. It's already over.
Oh, that is today.
Yep.
What do you know? Was it
Yeah.
at 10?
Was it at 10?
Which one, the homelessness?
Yeah.
No, it was 9:30. Yeah.
I was trying to check my memory, which isn't very good.
It was good. It went well.
Okay.
Mayor Baird, we do have some questions.
Yes.
And I believe these relate to the application for 2714 Dunsbury, the Cumberland Hotel. The statutory notice that was sent to residents within the 75-meter radius did not specify a specific date on which council would be making a decision. Is this in compliance with the provincial requirements?
Courtney, would you please answer that? Or can you answer it?
So I haven't had time since receiving this question to verify the question and what was in the notice, but I will look into that and we'll follow up if needed.
Thank you.
Question regarding the heritage alteration permit. Is the developer paying for commercial parking spots that aren't there, as it shows only 4 parking spots?
Yeah, so the cash in lieu requirement, it will be followed as needed. Typically so I believe that there isn't a cash in lieu requirement at this time, but that can always change when it comes to if the anticipated use of those commercial units changes. So depending on what the use is, more parking spaces may be required, and then cash in lieu would need to be paid.
And who pays that, the owner of the building or the business?
Well, we require, typically I think that can be sorted out between them, and it's not involved with the village. It was triggered by building permit application. So we would require that before the building permit is issued. And sometimes the tenant applies for the building permit. So that would be something that they would discuss between them.
Thank you.
The next question is regarding the amendment to the zoning bylaw, which I think was referred to at the table. Wasn't the zoning bylaw amended in 2017, making 4 stories downtown?
Nope.
No.
Yeah.
No, 2007, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
That's just me, but that I've
It would
asked
be
this
the last
several times.
OCP, right?
No, I think it was earlier than that. The last OCP we did in 2011 or 12.
About 14, I thought it was.
Well, we've had a couple. I
We
went back.
certainly didn't deal with that last term.
No.
That is not something we've ever dealt with. And when I asked the question last term, when this stuff first started happening, I asked our former CEO, and I was told 2007 is when this was on the books. So.
It's been on the books for many years. Okay, is that it?
There's no further questions by email.
Thank you very much. Motion for the closed portion, please.
I'll move that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 90 of the Community Charter to consider personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.